jump in and start from the last match I watched today, but hide your faves, people. Hide your faves from Fabian Marozsan, because he's coming. He's coming. Welcome, ground passers. Here is the last recap from the Miami Open, day 8, done after today. It's been great. I've been traveling, I feel like, forever, but after a week in Indian Wells, a week and a bit in Miami, I'm ready to be home with my things and not in a hotel. So this is the last update, and it's been really great. It's been a great experience. Again, this is something that I've wanted to do for a while, do the Sunshine Double as a fan, and here I am. I did it. And not only did I do that, I was able to bring along my podcast friends and listeners, and hopefully through the coverage I've done in Indian Wells and in Miami, hopefully some of you can do this one day as well. I think the main goal or the main mission of Ground Pass is to expose new people to tennis, especially the casual fan who maybe went to one tournament or saw one match on TV and their interest was piqued a little bit, is to sort of give you more insight into the tennis world and to encourage you to go see tennis live, because I think that's the best way to learn more about it and become better fans, and also to show that you don't need to buy tickets in a big stadium for $500 and make a whole thing out of going to a tournament. You can get a $30 ground pass from the Miami Open and get to see Sinner play Chris O'Connell on grandstand, because that's what happened today, So it's possible. Don't have to spend too much to see some really, really good matches. But let's get back to Fabian Marozsan. He is quite the player. I think, he came on my radar definitely because he played Carlos Alcaraz and beat him in the first round of Rome last year at that 1000 event. And it was a moment. Again, I think a lot of people think that was definitely the upset of 2023. And I thought, who's this kid? Want to know more about him. I followed Damien Coots on Twitter, and he has sort of this wealth of knowledge on players outside of the top 100 or players who mostly play challengers, and I learned a lot about Fabian Marozsan from there, and I just made it a point to follow him on the tour and see where he was playing next and watch his matches. And I think this is the fun thing about going to tournaments too, because I was doing that a little bit through after his win in Rome, but when it came time to the US Open, he was here. And I got to see him play live at the US Open a couple of times, and that's when I really fell in love with his game. I really love his game a lot. He has the variety a little bit like Carlos does with the drop shot, and he's a fun watch. So I've been following him since, and it's been nice seeing him again in person during Indian Wells and then here in Miami, and he's having the time of his life in Miami right now. He is now a quarterfinalist of a 1000 event. I got to talk to him in press a little bit, and he was very, I asked a little bit what he thought it was about his game that sort of bothered top players, because he's just beaten so many top 10 players. And he was very, he didn't really give anything away. You know, I think he kind of turned it around on me and said, well, maybe ask those players. But I do think there's an element of surprise that he brings to the court that players are not expecting. And you would think after the surprise he pulled on Alcaraz that wouldn't really happen anymore. But I do think there's an element of, it was a blip or it was a fluke. And that's kind of why he's still able to do it. I know he talked about the fact that this is his first Miami Open. He's new to the tour. It's not like he's been around for a while and people know him in the locker room and all of that. And I think he is pretty quiet. At least that's how he presented during press. But yeah, it's his first Miami Open, and here he is, a quarterfinalist in his very first Miami Open. So I do think there's an element of surprise. He plays Sasha Zverev next, and, I think Sasha is coming in as the favorite. I just looked at the scores for Sasha's match, and he absolutely just crushed Karen Khachanov. Very quick match. And Zverev is coming in as probably the favorite, but I would not count Marozsan out. I just wouldn't. There's something about his game that I think will get him into that top 30 position that he talked about wanting to be in sooner rather than later, really. And so, yeah, I'm starting at the end. That was the last match I saw. Didn't really see a lot of tennis today because I was kind of wrapping up my time at the Miami Open, so I was bopping in and out of matches. I watched a bit of Daniil and Dominic Comfer, and Dominic started off very, very well. I think he came out wanting to put on a show, not really put on a show, but definitely wanting to hold his own in the match, and he did for a while until the tiebreak. And Daniil took the first set in the tiebreak, and then the match was his. He won the second. He won the second set 6-love. So he easily got into the quarterfinals there. Sinner was playing with Chris O'Connell, and this was an easier match than his last match against Griekspoor. And again, it was Sinner being Sinner. This is the new Sinner, post-puke Sinner that we're just used to now. And it's great to see. I have to say, the thing I will remember most about this match really is someone unfortunately fainted in the crowd. Again, it was another hot and humid day. It actually was in the 80s. The high was somewhere in the 80s today, and someone fainted in the crowd. It was packed. Grandstand was packed. And once the crowd had brought it to the attention of the umpire, it was like Sinner didn't even blink. He didn't even sort of think about it. The first thing he did, he got Gatorades out of his bag, then he was getting a towel and ice, and he just went into sort of, emergency mode. And it was nice to see that he could just suspend the match in his mind and think about what was important in that moment. And it was very refreshing to see. Sinner is one of those, I call him the adult in the room. He's young, he's super young, but I think he is just a very mature kid, even if he is that young. What else did I say? I bopped around. The wheelchair invitational started. So I went over and I saw a bit of that. That was really great. I really am loving this idea that, the Miami Open had of adding a wheelchair invitational. Again, we're into the second week of the tournament. There's tons of courts that are just empty now. I just looked at the order of play for tomorrow, which is Wednesday, and most of the courts being used, the only two courts being used by the singles and doubles are Stadium 1 for all of the singles matches, and then the grandstand for all of the doubles matches. That means they're just all this court, the third largest court isn't filled. They're all sorts of smaller courts that aren't filled. I believe they're starting the Pickleball Invitational tomorrow as well. So I really like that. If tournaments like the Miami Open are exploring what they can do with the space in those like later stages of the tournament, especially for ground pass holders who have a ground pass, they can come in, get on the grandstand and watch doubles, but now there's all sorts of other things as well that they can see. I think this is a great experiment, and I really hope it works and other tournaments see that it's working and pick up the mantle and keep the good times going. Watched a bit of doubles as well, but mostly just, sort of wandered about and, said goodbye, I guess, to the Miami Open. One thing I was going to note, I'm going to make a little reel about this and put it on our Instagram, but I love these mini food carts and business carts that are surrounding the Miami Open. It's such a great way to have food and refreshments for all the visitors of the Open, but at the same time, highlight local businesses, because all these food carts that I saw over my time at the Miami Open are actually all local businesses in Miami, in the Miami area. And it's nice that you can see them and you're like, oh, I really love this burger, or I really love this little thing, and where do I get it? And the reason it came up to me today was that there was a florist that came, and they had like a little cart stand, and they were giving away free bouquets. And I got a free bouquet that I brought home, and they had a business and they were handing out cards and stuff. So I think it was a nice way to sort of promote the local community that is around the tournament. And I think it does create a really great ecosystem of businesses, and you're not just some sort of like fancy tennis tournament that comes in like, once a year, every 3 to 2 weeks, and then just disappears and doesn't leave much. I really love the way the Miami Open tries to contribute to the community. I know before the tournament started, they had a few players in different groups who went around and did some local sort of charity work around the Miami area. And I really love that aspect of this tournament, that it cares about the community that it is around, and it doesn't just sort of act like it's a little alien that plops down and then, gets sucked back up into the sky, not to return for another year. So yeah, there's a lot to love about the Miami Open. I think on the face of it, a lot of people are nostalgic for a location that I believe most did not really visit. They've just seen it in pictures. And I never went to Key Biscayne. I've only been to this tournament as it is at the Hard Rock Stadium. And yes, it's not a permanent structure, and you can see a little bit of the infrastructure that holds it all up. But it is far from the, idea of, it's in a parking lot. It's very far from that. The work that they've done to make this feel like a tennis tournament is really great. And again, if you hadn't told me it was built in the parking lot of the Hard Rock Stadium, I would not know the difference. I wouldn't have realized that it was, because they've done a really good job to put up this structure. And I think a lot of people have fun visiting it. So, add the Miami Open to one of your tournaments to visit. Today was my last day. This is the last recap. The next thing you'll see from us is a mini tournament guide for the clay tournament coming up in Houston, and then also the WTA 500 event that is coming up in Charleston. So stay tuned for those. Those should be coming up in the next couple of days. Those tournaments are starting next week. Tennis never stops. And that's why we love it. And that's why we love it. Have a great night. See you at the next tournament.